So today we are going to rank all of the Shadowlands raid bosses. Let's do this. Need that. Okay, before we start, these will be my opinion on the bosses before 9.2.5. That's when they brought out the fated affix. They're a different story because the fated affix overlaps with the boss abilities in weird ways. So let's start with the worst boss in all of Shadowlands, Fate Scribe Brocalo. And I think this is no surprise to anyone who has watched my commentary on my Fate Scribe kill. I just dislike the ring mechanic. I'm not going to spend much more talking about this. If you really want to know what I think about this boss, go watch my commentary. It'll make things a whole lot simpler. Next up is Remnant of Nerzul. The double malevolence was just a big pain in the ass, because I think you had 4 different ways of dealing with it. But the thing is, if you stick to a certain strategy, it would often not work. You'd have people flying off in random directions, and if someone dies with malevolence, it was a wipe. So it just was not fun at all to progress on. The next one, I'd say the first 4 on the list and number 1 and 2 were very easy to pick. The rest were kind of hard to place, but we'll get there when we get there. Rygolan's up next. So I've expressed how much I detested doing this boss to my American guild and Oceanic guild for almost 90 pulls worth of people just dying to all the simple things like forgetting that the massive bang pulls you in and they die because they're not actually standing on the circle. Or people not moving out of the orbs in the singularity quick enough, or not moving to a quasar quick enough. It happened all the time, mainly from our hunters, who just tunneled the boss forgetting they could do damage on the move as well. And also knocking the tanks off the side with their debuff. Not only that, Blizzard nerfed all the things that didn't really need to be nerfed. The most amount of damage came from the unavoidable damage you take from being in the singularity, so why that was is beneath me. Another boss I utterly detested is Shriekwing. There was just far too many of those white circles that would appear in the intermission, and it was so easy to get either comboed by 3 or 4 circles or get chomped up by the boss. And I think this went on for far too long as well. I think if you got 2 intermissions, you'd get bored pretty quickly, so that's why it's there. This next boss I have almost no love for, and I hate to do this boss every single time, which is Halondrus. Halondrus is just weird. When my guild started to progress on Halondrus, I wasn't there, so I tuned in on Daki's stream, and it looked like the healers had to do loads of healing on the move, which is true, so it doesn't really favour like priests or shamans. Not only that, it didn't really favour casters either, so you had to move around a lot to do all the mechanics, which I think was really bad. As a demo lock, this would benefit me because if I summon enough demons, then they would naturally keep up my damage while I was moving, but I understand how frustrating this will be for other classes that are less mobile. And I can't really put this as high as any other boss, other than the fact that he's a massive crawler robot who has these really cool mechanics going on. I don't even know why people call him the crab boss. He's not even a crab. He has no arms, let alone claws. Next is Lords of Dread. Lords of Dread is also weird. Like, it's good and bad. It's good because it introduces an Among Us mechanic, but it's bad because it didn't work out very well. Basically, you needed a weak core to do this, and I was very frustrated because I had to download the weak core for normal, and you all know how I am about weak cores. The fight itself is pretty fucking shit. As a range, it's just so annoying trying to maneuver yourself around the sleep puddles and the fear circles. And it just made me want to kill myself so I don't have to do the rest of the fight. Scolex is up next. Similar to Shriekwing, it's too long, too boring. The way you split the sand stacks is kinda cool. Although that's about it. You just have to alternate groups. Not really that impressive. The next one I have is Guardian of the First Ones. Again, there's not much going for this boss either. You just gotta know when to get into the pylons, and it was one of those fights where you gotta stack and spread almost constantly, especially as a ranged DPS. I hated it. That's all it is. It was just a terrible boss. Next one I'm putting together, because I don't know which is worse. So we've got Eye of the Jailer. An interesting boss to put in a raid lore-wise, but it just comes down to one mechanic, and that's the massive rotating eye beam you can see on screen. It wasn't fun as arranged. This boss as a whole wasn't fun either. It was just very back and forth kind of thing. Kill the eye, kill the little eye, kill the eye, kill the second little eye. Yeah, no, not for me. And I've also put together the 9. This boss was really lacking something significant. I think if they actually Paragon of the classic Clackseed this, it would be really cool. I did like how they comboed abilities together, at least on Heroic they did. Next boss I think that really let itself down was Dosani, the Fallen Oracle, or as my guild calls it, the Sausage. I'm never calling it that. Either way, this boss sucked. It didn't really have anything going on for it. However, I did like the dodging of the halos. Like as a Night Fae Warlock, you can almost avoid all of the halos. Reminded me of the eye beams from Unat. Similar to also having no mechanics, the Hungry Destroyer. A Hungry Destroyer had a bit more going for it, but it was just the leeching circles and the beams. You could almost handle the leech circles by not paying attention at all. Even though there might be a little bit more damage going out, it just came down to don't kill your friends by overlapping beams, which has happened far too many times. A commonly disliked boss being the Council of Blood, or commonly referred to as Dance Dance Revolution. I think this boss was the one that was changed the most on beta before making it to live. Not just the dance mechanic, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the mechanics were changed, including the dreaded Dark Recital, which is why this boss is down on my list, to be honest. I just hated the Dark Recital. This boss, however, is quite interesting in the same instance. Sunking Salvation. Another wave by wave boss, but done so well. We are starting to get into the good bosses now. The ads were almost constantly spawning, which is something they failed to do in all past tower defense bosses like Gienar, Galakras, Hellfire Sword, but goddamn did they nail that part. It's the Shade part that they didn't nail. I think the Shade had 4 different abilities, and the timings were all over the place. You had Fire constantly spewing out of the boss, while he's doing the annoying fire cleave on the tank, while he tried to burn someone to a crisp unless they have friends who avoid social distancing, while there's birds chasing people, leaving fire in their wake. That face was just a fucking mess, especially if they had those big Stoneborn ads up. But overall, it's a good boss. Next up is Soulrender Dormazane. This boss was awesome. He had a lot going for it, and I enjoyed doing this boss every single time we got here. It required you to think ahead, like for example, parts of the room would light up, would most likely one-shot you. But what you could do is move to an area that was previously lit up, since that is most likely a safe spot, rather than the previous area which was not lit up. Although it wasn't necessary, it did help. That's what I did at least. However, I feel like this fight was missing something. Next one is a bit of a weird one, Lady Enerva Darkvein. This boss probably would have been low on the list if it wasn't like a Lei Shen style boss. I did not do Lei Shen back then, but the idea of having only 4 mechanics and it being empowered throughout the fight is pretty cool, and it can wipe you if you're not on top of the game. Next one I have Sludgefist. I don't know why I put Sludgefist up this high, but something about this fight does not make me hate it at all. And keep in mind, starting now, we are getting to the really good bosses. Yes, Sludgefist is a DPS check, but it's a maneuver check as well. You've got to stick to your partner while making your way through the room, while not snapping the chain and kill each other. Some of the reactions when people snap their chains is so hilarious. So I enjoyed it. Same with the next boss after Sludgefest, the Stone Legion Generals. I think this was the only boss that I did not kill on Heroic, but I was there for a few pulls. I can't remember if I have actually killed it before the Fated FX. This boss also was changed a lot going from beta to live. But honestly, I think they did pretty good. There was a lot of very important mechanics, like make sure the blades don't cut through the entire raid and kill them all, which I have done with no remorse. And the fact that this kind of works similar to Valiona Thuralion was a pretty good concept for a raid boss. And it did require a lot of coordination with a lot of mechanics, so it made it a pretty fun fight. Next up, I've put the Big Bad Jailer. Very, very short fight for an end boss, and it is a real dummy check to see if people can put the bombs in the right place, from which we've wiped many times. To the same person kept going to the wrong hole, or people got mic controlled, and bring back the defile from the Lich King fight. I think they did a good thing by making it so those bombs weren't going on for the entire fight, and it changed from phase to phase. Otherwise, if we had that whole bomb mechanic for the whole fight, the Jailer will be much further down on the list. And I think he is worthy for a final boss of the expansion. Unfortunately, there are some bosses that are much better than the Jailer. Lahuvim. Lahuvim is a very, very simple fight. Drop bombs on the side, avoid circular bombs around the boss, and kill the ads when they come out. For a mid-tier boss, depending on where you look at it, I thought they nailed it. I don't know why, but I just enjoyed doing this boss. The run back was horrendous, though. Actually, quite a lot of the Sepulchre bosses had terrible run backs. But yeah, I thought this boss was really fun. Not as fun as, however, Kel'Thuzad. I don't know why Kel'Thuzad did not have many mechanics, but Blizzard somehow made it work. Kel'Thuzad was really fun to progress, and the abilities multiplying throughout the fight definitely made it interesting. The only downside is that it's one of those bosses where it heals to full multiple times, which for me makes it really demoralizing sometimes, because you might think that you have done his third health pool when you've only done his first. So, yeah, that happens. The next boss we have is Sylvanas. This, for me, is probably the most epic boss fight I've ever done, but it loses points because it's similar reasons to Jaina. It's a 14-minute long fight, even on normal, and you can't really make it easier with better DPS because you're still forced to play the mechanics. Visually, it's absolutely amazing. Mechanically, it sucks. Big time. But it definitely does not deserve to be as low as Holondrus or something. Because think, you're fighting her on top of Torgar, she's shooting massive arrows, she's pulling spikes along the side of the platform just like she did in the Shadowlands trailer. It's just everything you'd probably expect from a Dark Ranger Sylvanas, and I thought that was a really good boss, but it's just annoying to progress on since it was so long. Next, I've got possibly the most difficult boss I've ever come across. That is Sidon Athreus. I remember progging this boss with no clue, and he was hard as balls. Like, there were a lot of checkpoints that needed to be met, otherwise you were dead. Fail Night Hunter soaks, wipe. Getting the right amount of Burden of Sin stacks, wipe. Fail getting the right amount of people in the Conan Phase 1, wipe. Fail staggering their ads deaths in Phase 2, that was important, wipe. Failing dodging Ramonia, wipe. Fail tank positioning in Phase 3, wipe. That was very hard to do. All those things collectively just made this boss really, really hard, which I don't think is very fair, but it still trumps Queen of Shire and Veil Hounds of Sargeras in terms of how hard it is. Next up I've got Prototype Pantheon. I think this is what Stone Legion Generals really wish it could have been. Having this really complex but interesting council-style boss where the first two bosses share health with each other but not being shared with the other two bosses, I thought was an interesting twist. This is for normal anyway. On Heroic it didn't really change much, but I think the way that they designed the last phase was actually very clever, having all four of the bosses active, so naturally they should just fall over since, 4-target cleave is a thing. However, that gives them an excuse to make the bosses just go apeshit and combo all of their abilities on top of each other, which made quite an intense last phase, especially right now. Obviously it got easier with better gear and such, but you get the idea. Next up, possibly and regardless, one of my favourite bosses of all time, Huntsman Altamore. Another early boss that they designed so well. I just kind of wish that the mythic Sinseeker arrows were in on Heroic, just to make things a little bit more interesting. But the addition of the dogs were very cool, and how the tanks had to interact with each one differently. Marco and Hecutus, you just basically tank and spank. But Barghast really added the challenge with the Rip Soul, I believe, and his ultimate ability in the form of the Spawning Shades, which take extra damage when it's been CC for long enough. I thought that was a really cool mechanic to add. Very creative as well. Still, he was a very, very fun boss, and a quite good 2-target boss for Arms Warrior and Destro Locks. Okay, we're in the top 5 now. I've got Artificer's Imox, both versions. I don't care what anyone says, Artificer's number 5, and I will and yell at anyone who tells me it's shit, because Artificer's Imox is a fan-fucking-tastic fight. Yeah, I just really prefer his first appearance in Castle Nathria, since you see him twice. And his mechanics are really, really cool. You've got the ghosts chasing you, the exploding seeds, and you're running away from this massive looking scythe thing. His Sepulchre variant was good as well. You were still using the portals, but this time you were doing it to avoid the rings, which I thought kind of sucked. But as the fight went on, the rings came from different directions and they came in sets, so I thought that was really cool. Number 4, Tarago. I don't think I've seen a more creative boss fight in my entire WoW lifespan. Not only were the additions of the anima powers really, really cool, it made it feel like a Torghast run and getting revenge on the one who may have ruined so many Torghast runs. But the choice of powers you get actually matter, and it makes you think how you want to play the fight. Like, do you want to help your group and take every heart, or powers that increase people's damage and healing when you're near them, or do you just want to stand still and DPS to pick the best powers that are for you, or do you want to torment your group and pick 10 of towers in numbering form? I honestly wish they added more powers like that, where it gave you a benefit but also a punishment if you play wrong. Very much like that power where it increases your health by a shit ton, but it puts a massive slow on you if you stand still for too long. Something like that would have made the fight way more fun. There's still things they could have done better with the Tarago, but he is absolutely fine. The only real downside is that he went down as a first boss. If he swapped places with Sol into Dormazane and just made them less difficult or more difficult, that would be really cool. Number 3, Vigilant Guardian. Similar fight to Galacrest, but done so much better. Regardless of your DPS, ads are always almost constantly pouring out, especially on Mythic, which I think I've got going on. It was a really, 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 really fun fight. And ironically, he's a lot better than a lot of the bosses after him. So only 2 bosses left. This number 2 would have been number 1 if it wasn't for one reason. So number 2 is Anduin Wrynn. The only reason why Anduin isn't number 1 is because it had way too many unnecessary nerfs done to it. But the fight is absolutely amazing in the way that it was designed. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy around him, since originally he was designed for a last boss, and then he just got nerfed, I think, every day for almost a week, which is kind of embarrassing. And he was still getting nerfed as the patch went on. The only reason why you'd wipe on that boss is if the tanks didn't know how to dodge the wicked stars, DPS not killing the ads quick enough, which, to be clear, the Kingsmourn Famous is not hard. Like, it's not hard to kill those ads quick enough. But the intermission was fun as hell. Just blasting the Lich King with his massive DPS buff. I had a blast program this boss. Which means number 1 is Painsmith Rasnal, which I know people hate. But I think this is the best boss of the expansion. It would easily be one of my top 5 favourite bosses of all time. And I've said this in my normal commentary that I made ages ago, because I believe Painsmith Rasnal deserved his own video before all the others. I just love the fight, how the fight is designed by the little squares on the floor, and the spikes pop up from the ground, depending on where the tank weapon was thrown. And as a warlock, it was almost impossible to die on that fight, because people had to go out of their way to kill a warlock on that fight, and it can make it easier for everyone else with their demon blink, so they just got one less chain to worry about. And it's one of those fights where you got to pay real close attention about where you stand, in a way so you can dodge the spikes, because if that stunned you on heroic while the balls are coming across the room, you were dead, unless you had a stun immune. But either way, this is heavily relied on personal play and not killing your teammates, and I think this is the best, not by much. Anduin isn't too far behind, and it's one of those bosses where it just didn't need any nerfs or anything. Or mind you, it is a mid-tier boss, so it is understandable. So that is all the Shadowlands raid bosses. Honestly, I think Blizzard did a good job with the raids this time around. Not as good as BFA and Legion, Videos for those expansions will be coming out at some point. They come up with some really, really cool ideas for some mechanics. So that's all I've got. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.